Why are there so many women than men in Russia? For a long time now, the population of Russia have been lopsided in the favour of women, or should we say, against women. Whatever language you employ, the point we're making is that there are more men than women in Russia. This is certainly unsettling, as it is definitely leaving many ladies with no chance of having a Russian partner to marry. The Russian Federal State Statistics Service 2018 tallied up the population in a report that revealed that 68.1 million, representing 46%, were males, while 78.8 million, representing 54%, were females. What's behind this demographic phenomenon? In other words, why are there so many women than men in Russia? That's what this video deals with. The stark reality. We need to begin by reminding you that this gender disproportion is not new. It has been around for over a century. This fact is proven by the 1897 census, which gave the figures as 32.1 million men and 33.8 million women. With that figure, men constituted 49%, while women were 51% of the population of the country. Since then, the gap has continued to widen. Between 1959 and 1971, Russia was composed of 45% men and 55% women. Looking deeper into the age tiers, we find that the distribution changes with age. Take, for instance, people aged under 29, where there are more males than females. But among the septuagenarians and older people, there are 2,377 women for every 1,000 men. Does that tell you something? Here it is. The older they grow, the wider the gap. However, the difference is striking in Russian regions like Veliki Novgorod. There, women's average is 44 years, and they make up 49.7% of the region's economically active population. As the Russian Federal State Statistics Service Rosstat report shows, women seem to run the country. Meanwhile, almost 75% of local civil servants are women, and they also make up 85% of civil servants in municipal authorities. There's one particular category where men outnumber women. That's the highest positions of civil service, such as heads of departments. Men account for 60% of the workforce here. Another stark reality is that among economically active Russians, namely people aged 15 to 72, the two sexes are in close contest. About 37 million in this category are men, while 35 million are women. However, women are significantly prevalent in education, healthcare, and sales. But what are the factors responsible for all this? In comparison with other countries, some might argue that Russia isn't alone in this gender gap. They may cite examples of other countries where there are also more women than men. Well, let's put Russia in the context of such nations so that you can make more sense of the question, why are there so many more women than men in Russia? The proponents of the idea prove that Russia isn't unusual in this regard, claiming that even if Russia has the fifth highest percentage of female population on Earth, there are other people. While 53.8% of Russians are female, 51.3% of Japanese, 50.8% of Americans, 50.7% of Brits, 50.4% of Dutch, 50.2% of Australians, 50.1% of Swedes, 49.9% of Norwegians, 49.6% of Icelanders. The major factors. Now, what are the factors responsible for this inequality? The fact is that opinion differs and can vary from person to person, but let's discuss a few of them here. 1. Sex ratio at birth. The sex ratio is a big contribution. Russian parents are producing more baby boys than baby girls. Normally, the world birth ratio is 105 boys per 100 girls. In the absence of major crises, this is the human baseline. But where there are crises or a famine, the ratio can drop to 90 boys per 100 girls. This appears to be a factor in Russia, as we'll soon see. Another thing that can further change that is sex-selective abortion, as it is more obvious in China and India. 2. Age of population. This is another factor that affects sex distribution worldwide and is also paying out in Russia. It is a known fact that women generally tend to live longer than men. Countries with older populations will likely skew toward having more females. Before we continue, we need to tell you that differences and gaps in the life expectancies also play a significant role. 3. Emigration. Men are typically more likely to emigrate than women. Thus, in countries with significant emigration, there will be a greater percentage of females. This explains the situation in Russia, but also in Latin America, Africa, and probably Portugal. 4. Life expectancy. According to a source, women in Russia live on average 10 years longer than men in the country. This is actually quite an outlier when compared to most of the world. You will not find many countries with such a high life expectancy gap. The only ones you may find are countries sharing borders with Russia. The United States women, by comparison, live 5 years longer than their men, and this is still considered huge. Vietnam is pretty close to Russia in this with an 8-year gap, but it is nothing compared to what Russia has to offer. In Lithuania and Latvia also, the gap between life expectancies for males and females is about the same as that of Russia. In Albania, the difference in life expectancy is just 2.5 years. While the female life expectancy is 77.6, the male life expectancy is 75.1. In India, the difference is only 3 years. While the female life expectancy is 69.9, the male life expectancy is 66.9. The life expectancy difference in China is also 3 years, the same with India. Nevertheless, the female life expectancy in the country is 77.6, whereas the male life expectancy is 74.6. Australian life expectancy is higher. Females among Aussies are expected to live up to 84.8, while their male life expectancy is 80.9. This also produces just a 3.9-year difference. Ireland, with a comparatively lower expectancy, has a higher life expectancy gap of 4 years. While the Irish women's life expectancy is 83.4, the male life expectancy is 79.4. In the US, the female life expectancy is 81.6, while the male is 76.9, only a 4.7-year difference. In France, females are expected to live years longer than men. While the male life expectancy is 79.4 years, the female's life expectancy is 85.4, while the male is 79.4. In Japan, josei, as women are called in Japanese, have a life expectancy of 86.8, while their men are expected to live up to 80.5 years on average. This gives a difference of 6.3 years. In Brazil, women on average live 7.3 years more than men. While the female life expectancy is 78.7 in Brazil, the male life expectancy is 71.4. Finally, in Poland, with a higher difference in life expectancy, females live an average of 81.3 years, while the male life expectancy is 73.6, giving a difference of 7.7 years. But why do men die younger in Russia? The reasons are not so different from the reasons for the high male mortality rate in other countries. And this brings us to the next factor answering the question, why are there so many women than men in Russia? 4. Wars. Wars had taken their toll on the imbalance in the gender ratio of the Russian population. Before the First World War, there was a balance between both sexes. During the war, however, the proportion of women started to rise and the growth continued through the Russian Civil War. Famine and Stalin's Great Purge wreaked havoc on men especially. Thus, according to the 1939 census, for every 100 women in Russia, there were 91.9 men. The Second World War also took a heavy toll on the population of the Soviet Union, wiping out over 25 million soldiers. With a large number of men thus falling dead, the decline became so bad that in 1959 the gap increased to 81.9 men for every 100 women. Even shortly before the collapse of the Soviet Union, the gap increased to 89.5 men per 100 women, and in the territory now known as Russia, it was 88.1. 5. Alcoholism. Alcoholism is one of the biggest factors. It has long been an epidemic in Russia, and it remains to be so. Alcoholism normally hits men harder than women. Many men are either killed by the adverse effects of alcohol or often die in alcohol-related crimes and misadventures. Younger men in the country have an unusually high mortality rate due to this, and it has widened the population's gender imbalance. Do you agree with all the reasons given here? Do you have any other reason why there are so many women than men in Russia? Please, let's have your thoughts. Thank you for watching this video. Please don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell.